10. The wrong target. On a Wednesday night back in 2015, a 21-year-old man tried to pull off a series of heists. He went to 3 different places to steal cash. At each venue, he pulled out a shotgun and ordered all his victims to get on the ground and give him all the money they had on them. But it was on his last heist where things went seriously wrong. As he tried to flee the scene, he accidentally pulled the trigger of his shotgun and shot himself in the leg. He nearly tore his entire leg off. After all, this is a shotgun and not a pistol. It's not just a single bullet, it's hundreds of pellets that can blow your limbs off. Unfortunately for the criminal, there's nothing in the robbery handbook about what to do once you've shot yourself in the leg. The police eventually tracked him down to an apartment building. He was incredibly easy to identify. The cops saw a man trying to limp away from them on his profusely bleeding leg. It was obviously the limping man who had done the robberies. When the police emptied his pockets, they found all the cash they had earned on his night of stealing, though it wasn't very much. You don't get a big store from a nail salon and a fast food joint. In the end, the cops took him to a hospital where he had to be guarded by an officer while waiting to be discharged. Not only did he fail to get away with any crime, he also left himself with a wounded leg and jail time. 9. Drunk and disorderly. In Germany, a 56-year-old man named Daniel Onfray walked into a bank in the town of Mortain. This is a pretty small town, one of those places where everybody knows juicy secrets about their neighbors. It was about breakfast time. Daniel knew that he was in desperate need of the money and he had to act quick. So he started drinking to work up the bravery to rob the bank. By the time he finally worked up enough liquid courage to do the job, he was utterly wasted. He was so wasted that instead of putting on a proper ski mask to do the robbery right, he simply pulled a pair of underpants over his face to disguise himself. In a town where everybody knows everyone, this clearly did not work. Daniel was immediately recognized by several people working at the bank. The female teller actually persuaded him to put away his pocket knife and walk away while she called the police. The authorities arrested Daniel before he got very far and hauled him into jail. At his court hearing, he admitted not only to the bank robbery, but also to stealing a couple bicycles the day before. The judge didn't take any pity on the drunken lunatic and sentenced him to 8 months in prison for attempted robbery with a pocket knife. The judge also ordered him to seek alcohol counseling, which will probably do more good than the jail time. 8. Killing the accomplice. A gunman who was robbing a liquor store in El Sereno, Los Angeles, accidentally shot and killed his partner when the owner of the business put up an unexpected struggle. A life of crime is dangerous, especially when you have a trigger-happy partner. The gunman and his accomplice had gone into the liquor store armed and ready to rock, but they had never expected that the store owner would fight back so insistently. One of the robbers was armed with a rifle. His accomplice was armed with a knife. Somewhere during the fighting, the guy with the rifle pulled the trigger. But instead of blowing away the store owner that was fighting back, he shot his partner. Oops. This wasn't one of those shootings that you walk away from either. The accomplice wound up bleeding to death on the floor of the liquor store, while the other guy turned and ran away. The liquor store owner didn't suffer any injuries at all, but was extremely shaken. In the end, the shooter didn't get far and the police caught up with him. Not only is he now in trouble for robbery, he's also got a charge of manslaughter against him. 7. The Master Burglar. A man in Japan managed to get away with 29 robberies before he was finally arrested. He had a masterful scheme that, while obviously immoral and wrong, was quite frankly brilliant. Mind you, brilliant in a deceitful and scummy kind of way. Here's what he did. The man would get a job at a convenience store. Then on his first day, he robbed the store for all that he could get away with. According to the Japanese police in the Oita prefecture, This individual got away with at least $100,000 US in just over a year. He would start a job on a Tuesday, clear out the cash register, steal whatever goods he could, try to get into the safe, and then run away before anyone knew what happened. If he would have just stopped at $100,000, he may have gotten away with the crime too. He ripped off 29 stores across 16 prefectures. What are the Japanese equivalent of states? Police finally arrested him by compiling information from the various store managers around the country. They all detailed the same man with the same MO. Then when the robber went in to interview for his 30th convenience store, the manager interviewing him recognized his picture from the police, called the cops, and he was finally taken in for good. Was this guy a genius who came up with a perfect robbery scheme, or was he just as dumb as every other criminal who's gotten caught? Let us know your thoughts on the first day bandit in the comments, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. Thrown into the river. A perfectly innocent musician was killed by brutal gang members in a robbery gone terribly, terribly wrong. The musician's name was Thomas Kennedy, and he was just 28 years old at the time of his murder. He was on holiday in the county of Georgia, the ex-Soviet state, when a group of men invited him out for drinks. Now, it's important to note that if you're in a strange place and strange people invite you to drink alcohol, it's probably not a good idea to go with them. And in this case, it was the last bad idea that Thomas Kennedy would ever have. 3 days after going for a drink with these strange men, Thomas was discovered dead in the river. The Irish national had been murdered. 5 men were arrested for suspicion of committing the crime. But when the group went to court, they were adamant that they did not kill the tourist. They did freely admit that they robbed Thomas, but they said they never killed him. The police said otherwise. They suggested that after the 5 men robbed the Irish tourist, they panicked. They had beaten him so badly that they thought he was dead. To get rid of the evidence, they picked up his body and threw it into the nearest river. But Thomas hadn't been dead. Thomas was still alive when they threw him in the river, meaning that his final moments were spent struggling against the current and not understanding what was happening. It must have been terrifying as Thomas was being pulled downriver to his death. Luckily, all 5 men are looking at 17 years in prison for this terrible crime. 5. The butt dial. A German drug dealer was caught by the police after he fell asleep on top of his phone and accidentally butt dialed the authorities. He may not have been trying to commit a robbery, but this guy was still one of the dumbest criminals ever and deserves every bit of flack we give him. Because the guy was sleeping, the police couldn't actually hear anything incriminating. They could only hear him snoring and groaning. Still, the police have to check whenever they are called. So in the sleepy town of Voldbro, officers were dispatched. The cops were astonished when they arrived at the young man's home and discovered the stinky smell of cannabis. The guy had so much dope in his house that the police could smell it as soon as they stepped outside their patrol cars. When they entered the home, the guy was still sleeping. He was passed out dead on the sofa, though he did wake up when the police barged in. When the guy checked his phone, he saw that he had accidentally called emergency services not just once, but nearly half a dozen times in his sleep. Others found weed, ecstasy pills, meth, and a whole lot of cash. Enough evidence to put the criminal away for a long time. 4. Running out of gas. While trying to escape from a robbery in Berry Hill, an extremely dumb criminal ran out of gas and was arrested. According to investigator Tony Russo with the Berry Hill Police Department, Richard Ewing walked into a gas station very early on Monday morning with his hands in his pockets. He approached the station attendant, pretended that he had a gun in his pocket, and then showed the clerk a handwritten message demanding cash. Afraid for his life, the clerk handed over everything. He gave cigarettes, cash from the register, and even some scratch-and-win lottery tickets. With his robbery a success, Richard ran to his minivan and drove away. But he really hadn't thought this through. His van had no headlights, making the vehicle exceptionally easy to spot. Plus, the van had no gas in it. Police caught up to the thief, turned on their lights, and then got into a very slow chase. They were going about 30 miles per hour, 48 kilometers per hour. But the chase only lasted 2 minutes before the van pulled over to the side of the road and stopped. It had no more fuel to keep going. When Richard was pulled out of his car, he asked the police why they were trying to jam him up, as if he hadn't done anything wrong. But luckily for the cops, they found all the evidence they needed in his minivan, while the surveillance footage from the gas station clearly showed him robbing it. This guy was not the sharpest tool in the shed, that's for sure. 3. Hungry for chocolate. A man in Florida has been arrested for stealing a chocolate bar at knife point. It happened in Clearwater, with the individual walking into a Largo Wawa gas station with a deadly weapon and walking out with a Snickers bar. According to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, the thief was 49-year-old Eric Minto. Imagine being half a century old and having to resort to armed robbery just to eat a chocolate bar. Either this guy was already crazy or so hungry that he wasn't feeling like himself. When he walked into the store, he first asked the clerk at the counter if he could have some free food. When the clerk said no, that was when Eric pulled out the pocket knife and pointed it at the guy behind the counter. He then told the clerk not to make him do something stupid and to hand over the Snickers bar before things got violent. Naturally, the clerk gave the man the chocolate that he wanted. It's not worth dying over chocolate, caramel, and nougat. By the time the police showed up, Eric had already run away. But they found him not far from the store, filled up on chocolate and acting like nothing had happened. He was arrested and held on a bond of $150,000. 2. Poor linguistics. When Alan Slattery, 67 years old, tried to rob a bank, he failed miserably. Not because his plan was terrible or because he didn't have the gumption that it needed. His robbery was a failure because the staff at the bank couldn't read his handwritten note. When Alan walked into the Nationwide Building Society branch in Eastbourne, the UK, he gave them a piece of paper. But the cashier couldn't read whatever was written on it because of the man's atrocious handwriting. Alan got so flustered by what was happening that he simply stormed out of the bank without taking any money. After Alan had gone, the staff members crowded around the note and worked together to decipher it. Alan had written something along the lines of, "Just hand over the 10s and the 20s. Think about the customers." That was when staff realized he had been trying to rob them. They called the police. They quickly tracked down Alan, and he was linked to a handful of other robberies. He had gone into 2 other banks over the last 14 days and robbed them as well, getting away with something around $3,000, which isn't a lot if you ask us. When the police arrested Alan at his home, they had all the evidence they needed to put him away for 6 years. 1. A deadly promise. An 18-year-old girl from Texas is currently facing capital murder charges after a violent robbery gone horribly wrong. According to Dallas police, Sydney Whitaker directly caused the death of Adrian Wells, who was killed back in May of this year. The cops say that Sydney Whitaker used her youth and good looks to lure Adrian out of his apartment. She promised that she would hook up with him, but instead, 3 of her friends beat the guy to death. When Adrian walked out of his house, probably smiling ear to ear because he thought he was about to get some action, 3 men attacked. They pulled out guns, forced him back into his apartment so they could steal all his stuff, and then they shot him dead. Even though Sydney didn't technically pull any triggers, she is still responsible for his death by participating in the home invasion robbery that left Adrian dead. But what's really bizarre in this case so far is that nobody else has been arrested yet. Last we heard, she hasn't given up any of her accomplices. She's still sitting in the Dallas County Jail on a bail of $500,000. What's the biggest robbery fail you've ever heard of? Let us know about it in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button for more of the best videos from the channel. See you next time. Bye.